Hi, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Basil Farrington, and this video is on the 8th house. I'll be going over the important symbolisms of the 8th house and will show some chart examples. The following are the main experiences of the 8th house. Resources of others refers to others in many ways: physically, financially, characterologically, or psychological resources. All are included. Since the 8th house is the second house from the 7th, we look at its overall as being, psychologically speaking, the self-worth of others. Everyone feels a certain way about themselves in terms of their worthiness and value to others. Here, we're talking about the recognition of how valuable you are to others, or how valuable you feel you are to others. When the 8th house is difficult, this is going to be an area of life that one has to work on. When the 8th house is at ease, one seems to easily get support from others and tends to feel that she or he has value to others. He or she will tend to fit in more easily in team situations and in general do traffic very well daily with others. This one is pretty obvious. The 8th house shows the ease or difficulty that one has in dealing with the values of others. If you are challenged in dealing with the values of others, it makes your overall journey in life, dealing with people, difficult. You have to respect the values of other people. A lot of the dreariness of the 8th house comes from its association with death. Death is something that we're all afraid of, or most of us, and because of it, you can understand that anything that's associated with death has a darkness about it. But death in this context does not mean your death. It has to do with the impact in your life of the deaths of others. My last horoscope example in this video is going to show an active 8th house of an undertaker. I've yet another client with a loaded 8th house who's a hospice care worker that is with people as they transition. I have yet another client whose entire work is to handle the wills of people who have passed away. Whatever the case may be, we're talking about the impact of others' death in your life, not your death. The horoscope is what you experience, and you don't experience death physically. Your survivors do. When the 8th house is troubled, one of the frequent manifestations is the person who finds it difficult to be complimentary to others, even when it's the obvious thing to do. The person will feel like they're somehow diminished when they compliment. This is tied to how a person feels about their own worth when confronted with the worth of others. This one is pretty obvious. The horoscopes of many astrologers, psychics, and mediums all have strong 8th houses. The 8th house does not have sole rulership of sex. Astrologers assign it that way because of Scorpio being the 8th sign, and Scorpio has the association with sexuality. We assign children to the 5th house. Childbirth happens via sex. To remove sexuality from the 5th and make it only in the 8th is like removing business partnerships from the 7th and putting them in the 10th because of the association with Saturn and Capricorn. The 5th house is the sexual identity. The 8th house is what happens to that identity when engaged in the act with another. The horoscope shown ahead here shortly shows the interplay between the 5th and the 8th house as far as sex is concerned. The 5th house here is very tense. The sun and the moon are square, and there's the very difficult square between Saturn and Pluto, which is very important because Pluto rules the 5th house. This is a woman who uses sex to help manage self-esteem concerns, and she does so in a very bossy, autocratic way, controlling by almost ordering sex on call, regardless of how her sexual partner, boyfriend, or husband might feel at the time. Sexually speaking, this is who she is. She's an insecure woman demanding sex. That's her sexual identity. Now, when we flip over to the 8th house, we see Uranus ruling it, as intense as it gets, and it's an easy trine to Venus. She's multi-orgasmic, easily experiencing orgasms from sheer erotic romance without anything penetrating her or servicing her orally. The way she goes about approaching sex is controlling and difficult. That's the identity. What happens to that identity when the act occurs is explosive. If you want to know who a person is sexually, you'll start with the 5th house. It is as important to sexuality as the ascendant is to the identity in a horoscope. Vocationally speaking, the 8th house has to do basically with the rehabilitation and the idea of reorganizing others. It's any situation where one is working directly with someone else to help them with a life problem, especially if it's psychological or therapeutic. That would come under the purview of the eighth house. The idea is that someone comes to the eighth house person for something that they need fixed, changed, edited, made better, etc., that kind of flavor. For example, in film work, the eighth house person would be the director. He's making the other actors look better. In music, it's the producer or arranger. The idea here is kind of like what you have at Thanksgiving. The turkey has already been cooked and seasoned. It's already been done. Now it's on the table. That eighth house person just has to come and carve it so that it fits nicely on everyone's plate. This is the horoscope of my friend and client, Iyanla Van Zant. Iyanla has had a successful television show on the Oprah Winfrey Network for several years and has had a few books in the New York Times bestseller list. What she does with her career now as a life counselor is very typical of eighth house work, as you'll see in the clip of her work that's coming up. I should add that her life has been full of crisis situations that include sexual abuse from relatives and the death of her daughter in her arms on Christmas morning. Yeah, it's a tough, hard one to deal with, but all of her troubles and difficulties in life have made her what she is, and now what she does is go around trying to make lightness out of darkness in the lives of others.
I don't have to come around her, so why you need a restraining order?
Because you frightened her.
Does that give her the right to try to manipulate the system?
No, that gives her a right to protect herself.
Yeah, but I'm not a threat.
She felt threatened. No. I want you to use your tools. I want you to take a breath. This is not an attack. This is a moment of truth. Your mother was afraid of you because of your inappropriate behavior.
I learned the behavior from her and my dad.
Now we're having a conversation. Now we're gonna have a conversation. Talk to your mother.
I learned when you get mad to go off and curse people out and throw things and do stuff like that if people are doing you wrong.
How'd you learn that?
I saw you do it to Dad. And I remember one time you threw a knife at him. And it went past my face and went in the door. In Gardena. You don't remember throwing the knife at Dad?
I remember throwing the knife at the door. If I wanted to hit your dad, I would have hit him. I purposely threw it at the door. And that was 20 years ago.
And he was a child, and he learned violence and inappropriate behavior from you and his father. How does it make you feel to hear your son say you and his father taught him inappropriate expressions of anger? You don't have to justify or rationalize it. 20 years ago, he was 9. Do you understand how frightened and terrified he was?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get that? And
Yes.
now, and he couldn't take out an order of protection against you.
Mm-hmm.
But now you as a grown woman, when he displays what you taught him, you go get an order of protection. Tell him how it makes you feel when you hear him say, you taught me that.
It makes me feel
That you
are focusing on me before my growth.
Yeah, amen.
Yes, I was angry, but I know I get angry. I did something about it. I got a relationship with the Lord. I read books. I learned what triggers my anger, and I learned coping skills to help me to diffuse. So I don't go off like that. I've grown, but I do regret that you saw that. So, yeah.
Please forgive me.
Please forgive me
for the behavior I
for
demonstrated
the behavior I demonstrated
that taught you
that taught you
it was okay
it was okay
to express anger
to express anger
inappropriately.
inappropriately.
That's how you acknowledge. He can't unsee it. He
Yeah.
can't unhear it,
Yeah.
even though it was 20 years ago. Breathe, mama.
I'm breathing.
But I really was just hurt, man. Incredibly hurt, and I felt alone.
I'm so happy that you are here, that you recognize that, and that you are doing something, because now the sorries really have meaning.
I
'Cause you
apologize.
actually acted on it.
Now I apologize instead of being sorry.
And ask for what?
And I ask for forgiveness.
I forgive you.
Hello, my...
That's intense stuff, right? It's vocationally typical of the eighth house ideal of changing or making someone or something better. As well, it captures the intense passion of the eighth house. Edgar Casey's name usually needs no introduction. He was an extremely gifted psychic who lived in the early part of the 20th century. He lived his life completely and totally to help others. If you're not familiar with Edgar Casey's work, you owe it to yourself to become familiar, as his was one of the most fascinating lives that you can talk about. He lived his life to assist people with problems, which again is a big eighth house factor. The eighth house, of course, deals with inheritance. Barbara Hutton gained her wealth from inheritance. She's the heir to the Woolworth billions. You can see her eighth house sun is conjoined by Mars. Deepak Chopra's horoscope has a strong eighth house. He works with people in various ways to help them to achieve inner peace through the modalities he suggests. This is the horoscope of the late Senator Ted Kennedy, whose job was to simply sign bills that were already completed. All he had to do was John Hancock what others had done. Coretta Scott King is the wife of the late Martin Luther King Jr. I was 13 years old when he was killed, and I can remember her great dignity and grace at the proceedings. Just imagine the horror of going through something like that. And quite frequently, when the sun, moon, or the eighth house is otherwise emphasized, the experience of having to work through someone else's difficult death happens in life. In fact, one of my brothers has a loaded eighth house, and his wife died of a seizure in his arms. James von Prague's horoscope has about as emphasized an eighth house as you'll ever see. Prague is known for his astonishing consultations with people, wherein he's able to see departed souls and make significant connections between that soul and the person left behind. Investments are very much an eighth house function. Both Warren Buffett and Michael Bloomberg have done very well with it. In both cases, older thinking in astrology would never have predicted the lives that these men lived, especially Buffett with the close Sun-Neptune conjunction. Bobby Brown's life has really been impacted by death. It started with his wife, Whitney Houston, and it was followed by the death of their daughter, Bobby Christina Brown. Bobby has said that no matter what, his life will never be the same, and you can see how impacted his horoscope is in eighth house terms. This last horoscope belongs to a client of mine. He has been an undertaker his entire adult life. When he's not an undertaker, he does volunteer work in hospice. He has been alongside many people who have passed away while they held his hand, and he has buried some of those same people. So his complete total life has to do with affairs of the deaths of other people. As you can see, the eighth house does not represent doom or a kiss of death. For sure, there seems to be a prevalence of growth through crisis situations, but no life is perfect, easy, or without crisis at one point or another. If you take nothing else from this, I don't want those of you with emphasized eighth houses to feel negative about it. It's not a bad thing.